Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Mara, and thanks to the Veritas Group for their outstanding work on this virtual conference for making everything run so smoothly. Welcome, everybody. Like Mara said, my name is Kip Dooley, and I'm the Communications Manager for NewsMatch. Fundraising in this particular moment is a very significant challenge. Our hope is that today you'll leave this session feeling excited and also well prepared to meet this challenge. There was a breakout session just now on fundraising for nonprofit news, the unique challenges and opportunities. If you were not able to make that, I highly recommend checking out that recording next week because there were some really fantastic insights from a number of INN members. So here's our agenda for today. So many of the sessions so far have focused on this transformative moment for the journalism industry. We've got COVID-19, a mass movement against systemic racism, and an economic crisis in local news that have really brought things to a head for the whole industry. Martin Reynolds yesterday in his incredible keynote, he alluded to the fact that many journalists don't really like to think about or talk about money. But at the end of the day, as all of you know, producing quality journalism costs money. It's very labor intensive, and you deserve to be compensated for it. So NewsMatch is a one-of-a-kind collaboration to work on this very problem. And we'll get into those details shortly. We have 4 distinguished panelists today. Mara just introduced them. I'll let them introduce themselves at greater length. And they're providing key insights on 4 areas of NewsMatch. One is for first-time participants. The second is for securing local matches during the campaign. The third is developing a major donor strategy to use during NewsMatch. And then the fourth is fundraising in this moment. A quick note on terminology, if you're new to NewsMatch, local matches, which Elizabeth is presenting on, refer to additional matching grants that NewsMatch participants set up in their own community with a foundation or with a business or perhaps with your own board to galvanize further giving. So with this additional match, you can go to your donors and say, hey, because of NewsMatch and because of this extra matching grant from XYZ organization, we are able to double, triple, 4 times, 10 times your gift during this campaign period. Mara, I just want to check on sound. Is everything good?
Yep, I can hear you great, Kip.
Perfect. Before we jump in, I do want to draw attention to an announcement that Mara just made in the chat. There is an open job position for a 1-year post as NewsMatch program manager. So this is the position that Jason Alcorn has handled in the past. Many of you know him. He did a fantastic job kind of building this program along with Christina Shee from News Revenue Hub and INN to make it what it is. If you know anybody or if you yourself are looking for a 1-year full-time position, this is a great way to get involved. So I encourage you to check out that job posting. So can we go to the next slide? Great. So NewsMatch 101, what is it and how does it work? NewsMatch is a matching gift program. It is not a grant program where you write a lengthy application for a specific reporting project or to meet a specific foundation's goals. All active members of INN are eligible to participate in NewsMatch, and there's a simple onboarding process at the end of August. The fundraising campaign runs from November 1st to December 31st. Newsmatch.org is a simple turnkey platform for anybody to look up and find participating organizations and make a donation. Some participants use this portal quite a lot. They use this page a lot in their fundraising appeals. Some use it little or not at all. It's often used in tandem with the giving page on your website. NewsMatch provides 2-to-1 matching grants for individual gifts during the campaign period, up to $1,000 per gift, and up to a match cap. So last year, the match cap was $20,000. The year prior, it was $25,000. And this depends on the size of the matching grants pool year to year and also the number of participants. So the cap is determined over the summer and sometimes in the early fall by the funders, and we make sure to let participants know as soon as we hear about that. It is for INN members only because all of the INN members have been vetted. They're quality news organizations. They are nonpartisan. They are producing quality reporting. So the public feels comfortable giving money to these members without worrying about some of the shady things that can sometimes happen with so-called journalism. The Matching Gifts Fund is housed at the Miami Foundation. So participants register with them in September and then go through a reporting process after the campaign period to receive their matching grants in March. Can we go to the next slide? Great. So there are three main goals of NewsMatch. The first is to boost giving to nonprofit news. So everyone involved in NewsMatch is doing their part to achieve this goal. The funders are engaging other foundations. They're doing press outreach. They're publicizing it on their website. The newsrooms are obviously doing their own campaigns. And then this condensed 2-month campaign period and the newsmatch.org website present a unified campaign to the public to educate people about what nonprofit news is, why they should support it, and how they can support it. The second goal is to strengthen your end-of-year campaign. So participants, we're really trying to help you run an outstanding end-of-year fundraising campaign. We provide webinar trainings and a set of customizable materials to help newsrooms engage individual and major donors and raise money this year. In the long run, we're trying to help newsrooms develop long-term fundraising capacity. So not everybody has a development staff. Some don't even have a single staff member, but this is really an opportunity for everybody to build those fundraising muscles and really build them into the year-round fundraising strategies. Next slide, please. So here's the timeline. If you are not an INN member yet, but you want to do NewsMatch, you need to apply to be an INN member by July 31st of this year. From August through October, there are training webinars and campaign assets that are delivered to the participants. In September, there's a simple onboarding process with the Miami Foundation. The campaign runs from November 1st to December 31st. And then after the campaign, there's a reporting window and matching grants are paid out in March. Next slide, please. So what do the NewsMatch trainings look like? INN is providing some trainings this summer about how to engage your donor base between now and NewsMatch. So stay posted for those trainings. They're still being developed. On weekly webinars starting in September, that's when NewsMatch starts to walk you through the campaign toolkit to help you create outstanding fundraising materials that are customized for your audience and your goals. So the toolkit includes customizable graphics for your emails, for your website, for your social posts, sample copy that's like Mad Lib style. You can plug and play depending on your staff capacity and how customized you want to get. And I also want to note that last year, NewsMatch, INN, and News Revenue Hub started to provide more specialized support for both first-time participants and for newsrooms led by or serving communities of color. We want to make sure that this campaign is really geared towards your audience, your community, and your fundraising goals. Next slide, please. A quick overview of the results from 2019. The full results are on medium.com/newsmatch if you want to see those. The big number that we love talking about with everybody is that NewsMatch helped raise $43.5 million for 195 participants last year. To break that down, $3.37 million came from the matching grants, $1.44 million from local matches, $205,000 in goal-based bonuses, which are bonus grants awarded to participants who meet specific metrics, like bringing in 100 new donors during the campaign period or raising more during this NewsMatch than you did last year. And then it's also important to note that, during NewsMatch 2019, there were 527,000 individual donors and 62,000 were new donors. So hats off to all the participants for those fantastic results. A big thank you from all of our funders for helping to power this program. And with that, I'm going to hand it off to Mukhtar Ibrahim from Sahan Journal.
Hello, everyone. My name is Muqtar Ibrahim, and I am the founder of Sahan Journal. It's a nonprofit news publication that was launched in August of last year that covers Minnesota's New Americans. Can we go to the next slide? So a little bit about my background. I was a journalist in local media outlets. I worked for Minnesota Public Radio News and the Star Tribune for many years before I decided to launch Sahan Journal. And the reason was to increase the quality and content of news coverage around um, this growing immigrants and refugees in our state. So we launched in August, and we were invited to participate in NewsMatch around, when the applications were opened. So we had very little time to really prepare for the NewsMatch. I didn't have any um, development directors. I came from a journalism background, so my fundraising experience was very limited. But the good thing was I had people who were really experienced in fundraising, who were working with me and helping me out with the messaging and the work we were doing. One person that comes to mind is Valerie, who has decades of fundraising experience, and Kate Moose, who was also helping me with the fundraising part. So we participated in NewsMatch 3 months after we launched, and the thing that really helped me was um, it really pushed me out of my comfort zone for someone who didn't fundraise before or didn't know anything about how to raise money. The key was it pushing me out of my comfort zone, and um, for us we didn't have any time to prepare, but I really believe in the mission of what we're doing, and I kind of put all my feelings aside so that we can sell this idea to the community who are really excited about the project. Next slide. Yeah, so when we launched, we had a nice coverage from both local media outlets and national outlets. NPR covered our launch, so that really helped the face of the publication in terms of people getting to learn about what we're doing and the mission of the organization. We had very limited audience, so our web traffic was very low. Even if we post the NewsMatch news on our website, we had very low web traffic to our website. Our newsletter, we were trying to increase our newsletter subscription before we launched the website. We had a splash page where we were collecting emails and names, but that still was very low. And since we didn't have any full-time reporters, we were producing 1, 2, 3 stories a week on our website, and which means we cannot use those traditional tools that made other news organizations use to fundraise. Um, we could not send newsletter emails, and our website was not updated regularly. So we had a backup plan that really worked for us, and that is on the next slide. So in Minnesota, we have something called Give to the Max Day. It's around mid-November every year. It's 24-hour marathon philanthropy where all nonprofits in the state participate in, asking money from people they serve. So we put up our page and were approved to participate on that website. And during that day, we raised almost more than $8,000 in Gift to the Max Day in mid-November. So that really took care of almost half of our NewsMatch goal, which was $20,000 in 2019. So we used a lot about Twitter and social media a lot because, as I said, other traditional tools were not working for us. So we utilized Twitter. I have a lot of followers on Twitter, and I was up almost the whole day to solicit donations from people who are reading our website. We used Facebook a lot, and we connected with people who were influencers in those communities to really spread the message to their followers and their community, and that really worked for us. And we, can you go to the next slide? When we were doing this, we used a whiteboard, which became very famous in the local media scene. And when someone gives us an $10 or $15, we'll put up their names on the whiteboard, and we'll post, if someone gives some money, we'll write down their name, we'll post that on social media, and people will retweet, and we'll immediately get 10, 15 people who will come to the website and give us money. So we ran out of names on the board, and I think that was really something that just worked for us on Give to the Max Day, and that helped us raise almost $8,000 in 24 hours. So when we're doing this, of course, News Revenue Hub and NewsMatch will give you a lot of materials which will help you in terms of reaching people. It's campaign messaging. They have everything that you need to utilize. They have a lot of messaging about, if you're using newsletter, they have templates that are designed for you with complete messages. So you just use that to customize your needs. And we use that a lot, even though we're not sending out newsletter, we were using that language on social media. You can really customize and use them to your needs. We connected with influencers in the community, as we said, and those will help you spread your message to people who believe in your mission that you will not ever have reached. So we send them the templates, we send them the language, we give them our Twitter handles and our social media links and our donations link so that they can spread that on your behalf. I think if you can do that, that will really help you in reaching more communities and more diverse people who come to your website or who really believes in your mission. Something that we'll have emphasized was local matching gifts. We had a short time to really connect with corporations or local community foundations to secure matching gifts. So that's something that we haven't really done in 2019. And when we were doing this, we were just asking people for donations, and we were not emphasizing more on the monthly contributions. So NewsMatch will really match your grants. If someone becomes a donor at the $10 level, NewsMatch will match the full year value of that donation. So they will give you $120. And we were not emphasizing that much. So hopefully next year, those are some things that we'll keep working on. And I will be here for any questions later on.
Okay, we have an issue with your audio right now.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
All right. Thanks so much, Mukhtar. Feel free to type your questions in the chat, folks, as we go. I'll keep an eye on them for the Q&A at the end. And up next is Elizabeth Hambuchen from Mississippi Today.
Thanks, Kip. Hi, everyone. I'm so glad to be here talking about NewsMatch because it'll be here before we know it. We can go ahead and go to the next slide. A little bit about who we are, just briefly. Mississippi Today is a statewide nonprofit news organization in Mississippi. We cover politics and policy, and we launched in 2016. 2019 was our third NewsMatch to participate in and our second as a member of the News Revenue Hub. In 2018, we met the match, but we didn't have any local matches. And in 2019, we met the match again, but this time with $49,000 in additional local matches. And we launched our membership program in November of 2018. So in 2019, we had a bit of an infrastructure to change our focus to doing the work of NewsMatch year round with bigger donors. We can go to the next slide. So like most nonprofit newsrooms, I imagine, our biggest challenge with fundraising is just bandwidth and time. I handle all of the membership while also being a member of our engagement and audience team, and our CEO, Mary Margaret White, handles major donors and foundations while also being in charge of a lot of other things. So my main role when it comes campaign time is planning and executing email appeals and strategy, but also doing a lot of the prep work prior to November. And it's a team effort. So I used to get a little caught up on, building out this schedule ahead of time and executing the schedule as it was planned. But in 2019, with our shift to focus on getting some local matches, that at the end of the day, it just became about getting it done. And that's why we're so appreciative of the resources that NewsMatch and the Hub have provided, because so often when the news shifts, the message shifts for fundraising. And so it's easy to be flexible and customize as needed. And when it comes down to it, the more flexible we've been, the more we've really liked our results. Next slide. So as I said, we launched our membership program at the beginning of NewsMatch in 2018. So in 2019, we had an infrastructure to solicit smaller donations through our membership program. And so we were able to shift our focus on getting some local donors reinvested. We started by sending solicitation letters to people who had given in the past in a very structured way. So these donors had usually given over $1,000, some were a little lower, but the way we were able to do this was in 2019, we had built out and began using a process to thank larger donors and keep track of making renewal asks. And the way this process works, it's pretty simple. On the first of every month, we run a report in Salesforce, we use Salesforce, that shows us who in the last month had given over a certain threshold. And based on how much they had given, we communicate with them to say thank you in varying degrees of personal communication. And then the other part of that process is making renewal asks. So also on the first of the month, we run a report that shows who in the next month is up for renewal, meaning that they haven't given in more than a year. So because we had built out that process and started using it, in October of 2019, we quit making the renewal asks so that we could save them for the end of the year to build this local match. And we sent out solicitation letters to ask for these renewals, like I said, and we specifically listed their past gift amounts and asked them to double it for 2019 so that we could say, last year you gave us this amount and we did this with your support, and in 2019, we want to be able to do this, and we ask that you commit to giving again. And we got about half back with commitments. And the other part of these asks were of our board. So we ran a bit of a risk with timing, but we had a board meeting in November in which our CEO asked our board to build a collective match. She thought it was important to build a financial responsibility in year-end giving with our board in a very genuine and need-based way. She found it useful when making these asks just to be direct and not afraid to ask twice and to follow up quickly. So the board meeting was on a Sunday, and on Monday, she followed up with commitment letters. Whereas in the past, it had been a much more loose structure saying that, we're grateful for your pledge and we can't wait to receive your payment. And this time we really focused on saying, we're obviously grateful for your support, but we want you to sign this letter, and here's a deadline that we would like to receive your payment by. Because overall, it can feel weird to follow up, and you think that surely if they say they'll give, they will. But we found the key to our success was to send them a hard commitment with a deadline. And one opportunity we have in 2020 that we'd like to focus on is doing better at communicating this local support from our local matches to our readers to be able to secure the matches early. So This last year, we weren't able to leverage it to our smaller donors as much as we'd like, because like I said, the timing, we didn't have those ahead of the campaign. So in 2020, we really hope to have those ahead of time so that we can leverage them. And then we can start to move donors who have potential to move up the donor scale up with bigger commitments. And it may sound kind of cheesy or cliche, but they say the best donors, some of your best donors are the ones that you already have. So just not being afraid to ask for more and follow up in concrete ways. And next slide. So what can you do right now to prepare for the year end? As I mentioned earlier, one of the most helpful things to us has been our thank you and renewal process. Before this, we were communicating with donors, but with no real rhyme or reason other than asking for a renewal. So sometimes it felt a bit weird asking for money when, we hadn't talked to them for a while, or we didn't have a paper trail of when we had last talked to them. Because we were never able to get ahead of our renewals, and this process gave us a meaningful structure on when to ask who for money. And like I said, we were able to keep a paper trail of who we had thanked in what ways and who we had asked when. And when we started building out this process, we saw examples that were pretty complex or intricate, and we knew that between the two of us, we just wouldn't be able to maintain that on a monthly basis. But it was important to us that we just got it done. So we simplified what we had seen to make it work for our capabilities. And just like the thank you process, we found meaningful communication with our board has been a big key. Our entire management team has been tasked with regular communication with our board in their own subject areas, with our CEO as the main liaison. Because for us, it's really been about building the relationships and building the board's confidence in our team. So that way, when we go to ask them for that support in year end, they have a more comprehensive understanding of what we've been accomplishing and how. And on a smaller scale, just like frequent communication with our major donors or our local matches, just making sure you're paying attention to smaller donors and readers and their habits as well. So one thing we found success with is building out groups among our email subscriber base and being able to segment them at year end. So like with events, we collect email addresses and we put them into our subscriber base, and we use MailChimp. So creating groups that say, this person attended this event then, so that we can send them a personalized email appeal that says, we know that you appreciate our work doing this, and we want you to support us for that. So I think that the most important thing is to start thinking of NewsMatch and year-end giving as a whole as a year-long project. So start assessing the ways that you can engage in meaningful communication with donors of all size, and then building structures that work for you and your team to be able to get it done will really set you up for success come November. Thanks. That's all.
Excellent. Thanks, Elizabeth. Next up, we have Julie Drizzen from Current. Keep the questions coming in the chat, folks.
Hello, everybody. I'm happy to be here. And in case you don't know, Current is the trade publication that serves the public media field. We were started 40 years ago by stations that wanted someone in Washington, D.C. keeping their eyes and ears on the FCC, CPB, PBS, and NPR. New slide. We cover policy, programming, development, technology, but our most important and popular content is about people. Who got a new job and where? Public media employs around 22,000 people, and it's a really tight community. So we are really a small town newspaper. New slide. And I mean that literally. We print 8 editions each year. That's down from 23 when I arrived 5 years ago. Current's always been a nonprofit dependent on advertising, and subscription revenue. And in the last decade of digital disruption, we've been sustained thanks to operating grants from the WinCode Foundation. This support has enabled us to innovate, and our annual budget fluctuates around $1 million. We have 6 full-time employees right now. New slide. When I became Current's first executive director in 2015, I wondered why Current had never asked readers to donate. Now, there are a lot of good reasons for that, but I think that the main one is that there was nobody who had the bandwidth or the expertise to do it. Frankly, I didn't either, but sustaining Current was my job, so I thought I'd take a crack at it. And like all of you, we needed to diversify our revenue, right? New slide. But we had a huge hurdle from the get-go. Giving is very personal, and Current is a professional publication. When you say, I gave at the office, you usually don't mean that you gave to that thing that you get at the office. But I worked out a story in my own mind about why people should donate. Number one, most of our subscription revenue comes from public radio and TV stations that buy Current for their employees. So the majority of our readers haven't actually ever paid for it out of pocket. Our core audience includes some people who've been working in public broadcasting for 20, 30, 40 years, and they've relied on Current to help them succeed at work, including some leaders who've actually gained national prominence because they've been quoted or covered or published in Current. And even though a CEO once said to me, sometimes you want to be in Current and sometimes you don't, I think most of them know that having an independent watchdog is essential to the public media ecosystem. So we have a very strong value proposition, and I thought I could make a strong case for support. That was one. 2, public media's business model, as many of you know, is based on getting viewers and listeners to support something they can already get for free. That's the business model many of you are copying and embracing now. So theoretically, our readers, above all, should be able to relate to our pitch and understand the importance of supporting us, even though they don't have to. Now, we had some serious challenges. Some in our field thought that donating to Current was a conflict of interest because we cover them. Secondly, we had to draw a distinction between a subscription and a donation. A donation did not get you a subscription unless you wanted to lose your tax deduction. And finally, another challenge was being part of a university. We're part of American University School of Communications, and we get some in-kind support from them. But some of that support is not so kind. For example, AU required that we use their donation page and credit card processor. So when our readers clicked on a donation link, they landed on an alumni giving page where they could choose from a drop-down menu to give to Current or to a scholarship fund or to a particular school, or maybe even to sports. So December 2015, we took our first baby steps and did a fundraising campaign. And as you can see, we raised around $3,500. We tried again at the end of our fiscal year, which then was April 2016, and we raised about the same amount. Not exactly a success, but it was a start. And I had to do a lot of positive self-talk here to tell myself that was $7,000 we didn't have before, and the 2 campaigns brought us 136 new donors. So we repeated that cycle again the next year with a better return. In December 2016, we raised $8,000, and then in April 2017, $4,500. So it wasn't so shabby, still not where we wanted to be, but we did have a secret weapon, and his name was Adam Ragusa. New slide. Adam was the dynamic host of Current's podcast called The Pub. And to use public media lingo, he pitched for us during our fund drive, and his loyal fans gave to Current to support the podcast and to get a pub glass. Now, sadly, the podcast is gone now, and so is Adam. New slide. He left his job as a journalism professor to become a home chef and a viral sensation on YouTube. In fact, his most popular video about how to make New York pizza has gotten 3.7 million views. He's making a lot of money now. We miss him. Now back to Current. We were really excited to be included in the 2017 NewsMatch, and we desperately wanted to reach that unreachable star. New slide. But there was, because there was $28,000 on the table and we needed it. We also needed to give people a reason to give besides the fact that their donation would be doubled. So I landed on an idea I thought might motivate people who really don't need another tote bag. Next slide. The Public Media Honor Roll. Now, 2017 was the 50th anniversary of the Public Broadcasting Act. So for a donation of $50, readers could nominate someone to the honor roll. Now, we launched our NewsMatch honor roll campaign just before Thanksgiving to tap into that theme of giving thanks. And we encouraged people to name their mentors and their colleagues and their bosses or people who passed away that who had inspired them. New slide. We listed all the honorees' names online, and we also invited the donors to add a few words about why they gave in their honor. And we emailed the honorees to say, if they were alive, hey, you were named by so-and-so. And by the way, here's an opportunity for you to name someone else. And, some people actually rose to that. So we were trying to create a virtuous cycle. In the first year, we saw an outpouring of nominations. People in public media were hungry to express gratitude. New slide. Now, of course, we did make some mistakes and we faced some challenges that created more work for us. So in this year, we were happy to get permission from the university to pivot to GiveGab, that giving platform, where we could brand our own page. But honestly, it was confusing for donors to go outside to some other platform. Because we're a trade publication, here's a challenge we faced that many of you will not. Our lists are about 99% work email addresses. So we got a ridiculous amount of out-of-office bounce backs from our fundraising appeals that were sent during the week of Thanksgiving and during the last 2 weeks of the year. This meant that we had to do a lot of work on social media. Now, another problem that we challenged that we still have not solved for is that we were pushing both NewsMatch and the honor roll. And that's some sort of duplicate, it's divided messaging, and it's hard for us to get a grip on that. So a new slide, please. So still, we were thrilled in 2017 to raise almost $19,000. That's more than double what we did in the previous year. And that became $38,000 thanks to NewsMatch. Now, of course, I was disappointed that we didn't raise the full match, but I'm still proud of how we did and very grateful. New slide. And I shared the good news with all of our readers. Transparency, right? Where's your money going to go this year? I should also just mention that this was an enormous lift for us. It was almost 99% my work. Most of the NewsMatch materials that we got from INN really had messages that were not appropriate for current. They focused in on the power of investigative reporting and local journalism in your communities. So we had to rewrite and write all of our own letters and create all of our own advertising. New slide. In 2018, our NewsMatch threshold was lower, so we thought it would be achievable, but we didn't get there. In fact, we did worse than the previous year. It was demoralizing. We had fewer donors, we had less revenue, and thanks to a $10,000 match, which we called the triple match, from the Wingcoat Foundation, overall, our fundraising was about the same as 2017, what we brought in. New slide. So what went wrong? I don't really know. The honor roll, which is an idea I think you might consider stealing, it just was not as vibrant in the second year. But I was determined anyway to do better in 2019, and I wasn't giving up on that honor roll. Here's what I did. New slide. Over the summer, I reached out to current and retired public media executives to ask for their advice on a new initiative we plan to launch this year. And I really did need their advice. You've heard the saying that if you want money, ask for advice. But truly, I was asking for advice. And at the end of this conversation, I sort of pivoted and I explained NewsMatch to those who didn't know about it, which unfortunately was a lot of them. And then I asked them to make a sizable pledge to Current, a pledge to be redeemed November 1st when you got that letter from me. And many of them made those pledges. I wanted to have as much money lined up in advance to take some of the pressure off of me at the end of the year. It didn't take the pressure off, but the strategy did work in terms of raising money. So because of these personal appeals and more approaches in the fall, we increased our $1,000 donations from 2 in 2018 to 7 in 2019, and grew our $500 gifts from 3 to 12. So our major donors contributed 47% of the $28,636 that we raised in that winter campaign. And when the matches came in from WinCode and NewsMatch and the William Penn Foundation and the Commonwealth Fund, our grand total was $64,136, a far cry from that $3,500 we raised in December 2015. So a few footnotes, new slide. Last year, we gave up on GiveGab and just directed people to an AU giving page, which we were able to customize a little bit more. We now have 410 people in our donor database. We have their home email addresses, not home, their personal email addresses. Honestly, I don't know if we're going to be as successful this year. Probably not, given the job losses, the salary cuts, furloughs that we're seeing in increasing amounts just in the last week in public media, and the overall economic insecurity in our field, which I'm calling COVID economics. But still, we will try. And I have a message to public media executives out there. I don't know if there are any watching this right now, but I will be asking you for your advice sometime very soon. So thanks for listening, and I'm looking forward to your questions.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Julie. We're going to jump to Christina from News Revenue Hub for a short section on fundraising in this moment, and then we can get into some more Q&A.
Hi, everyone. So it was just really great to hear from Mukhtar, Elizabeth, and Julie just about how you have all used NewsMatch in such creative ways over the last few years. And Mara, if you can move to the next slide. I just have a really quick slide so we can move on to the Q&A. I think one of my favorite things about NewsMatch is that this is a unique program that's a great collaboration, but it's also designed to make it whatever you need it to be, whether it's focusing on those major donors and that year after year growth, or even just using it as a first-time way to start building broad support, even having a way to communicate with your readers. I wanted to spotlight something that happened over the spring. I know that we're in this really unique time where the world from 4 weeks ago was not the world from 8 weeks ago, and we have no idea what now until December is going to look like. But, you know, in the beginning of May, we ran a Giving Tuesday Now campaign. This is the height of the COVID crisis. And we saw 106 of you newsrooms out there raising $1.14 million in 3 days. And I think as we think about the uncertainty of what's going to happen, this to me is a bright spot to see that not only are readers willing to invest back in news, but that this is, I think, really representative of the role and essentialness you play with your readers in building that long-term trust in serving their critical information needs. I also think now, as we're seeing everything happen in the aftermath of the death of George Floyd, this is important. This is even more important, just this notion of that you guys are nonprofit news organizations that are doing the on-the-ground reporting and reporting from these critical issues from a variety of very thoughtful views. This is a story that needs to be told, and kind of the role that you guys are all playing as you help all of us navigate through these very challenging times. So, you know, with that, as we think about this moment and what NewsMatch means, I would really go back to what Elizabeth said about think of NewsMatch being a project, a year-long project. This isn't something that you should save it all for December. This has to be ongoing, consistent work if we're really going to be serious about long-term sustainability. I think I'm going to share a little spike readiness toolkit that we've shared in some of the Giving Tuesday webinars from a couple weeks ago. It's just to get ready. You're experiencing unprecedented traffic and the demand from your readers is high. So as you have all of these new readers finding you, joining your email list, I think keep reinforcing that message of your mission, that you're here to provide critical information and that you're here to serve the readers and help them understand that this is the position that you're going to be coming from as you cover the election, as you move them through the end of the year. And as Julie said, even just understanding your audience, knowing what it is that they want and finding the time now to really do this legwork or even get on a new donation page. There are a lot of tactical things that you should be doing now to just strengthen that foundation so you're poised and ready to get donations, whether it's the day after the election, the days leading up to the election, or even just right in December, or even now when there's not even a match. I think I just want to leave it open for questions. I know we don't have a lot of time, and I think I enjoy hearing from the organizations that are on the ground doing this type of work. And I'll be here again leading the trainings this year and designing the toolkits to guide you through the rest of the year. So if you have any questions or want to see something different, we want to be able to serve you too.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Christina. For anyone who hasn't interacted with Christina or folks from the News Revenue Hub, I mean, they're amazing. What they do in terms of presenting, customized materials on really short notice, providing one-on-one coaching is just phenomenal. It does so much for the whole field of nonprofit news. So I have one question I'm going to toss out to the whole panel. Anyone who wants to take a stab at it, we'll love to hear what you have to say. Somebody asked, how much do you keep donors informed in the year following a gift? So I think this does sort of depend on what kind of gift, right? I'm sure you have a lot of $5 to $10 donors, then you've got your kind of mid-range donors, and then you've got your major donors. So it might depend, but do any of our panelists have an answer on that? How much you stay in touch with donors in the year following a gift?
I'll just add something. This is an area of weakness that I plan on fixing, like in the next month. I would say that I personally communicate with all of our readers through letters from the executive, which are very honest about what's going on behind the scenes at Current, as well as, offering some thoughts about what's happening in the public media field. So, and I communicate with our executives on a regular basis around many of our initiatives. But in terms of a letter directly to people who've given, I haven't done that. And I plan on doing that because of the current environment that we're in right now. So that letter is percolating in my mind.
Thanks, Julie. Go ahead, Elizabeth.
Sorry, Kip. When it comes to smaller donors, we have a monthly membership newsletter called The Exclusive, which I coordinate. So at least once a month, our smaller donors are getting a behind the scenes look into our newsroom, whether it's an interview with a staff member or a look behind the scenes on a big project. We make sure that even if we're just repurposing something that we've used in a grant application or whatever it is, that we're making sure our smaller donors are being communicated with. And then as I said in my presentation with our thank you and renewal process that we hope to expand on in the near future, where that helps us ensure that at least a month or so after they give, they receive a letter from us thanking them, and then at least whatever amount of time before we ask them for another gift, that we're communicating with them again. And I'm sure in the future, hopefully we'll have a better process in the middle there, but just making sure on both sides that there's a personal communication.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Mukhtar or Christina, do you have anything to add to that one?
We are a 10-month-old publication. So when someone gives us money, we tend to send them an email thanking them for their gift. And when we concluded NewsMatch last year, we sent thank you letters through the mail to all the people who donated through those 2 months.
I really liked what Elizabeth said about finding ways to repurpose work that you've already done. You know, things that you're putting together for a board report or even a grant report. These are things that I think readers would really enjoy reading about, to see what goes behind the scenes into this type of reporting. So always try to find ways where you can be a little bit more efficient, and just find ways to steward your readers in a way that's not going to be an extra burden on your team.
Thanks, all. Christina, there was a question about if you could talk in a little bit more specifics about the added layer of the 2020 election in fundraising, and if you've seen any best practices. I mean, I know we're not there yet, but you spoke a little bit about some of the insights from the Spring Giving Tuesday Now campaign. But what are some of your early thoughts on that added layer of the election, especially as it's coming right at the beginning of the NewsMatch period?
I think from now until NewsMatch, I think it's good to take a step back to figure out how are you going to cover the election, in what way that makes sense for your readers and your community, and then be very clear about the role that you're serving. You know, you may not be covering the same local races. If you're local, you know, covering things at the national level may not even apply to you. So it's really important to think about how you're covering those school boards, mayoral races, and make that distinction with your readers from the start and communicate that. I think in terms of fundraising, I think this is something that we should be doing, you know, before NewsMatch. Don't save it towards the end of NewsMatch, especially if you see there are hot moments within your community where you need to strike while there's an opportunity. I think being nimble and being flexible and just, you know, reading what's happening. I think that just stay nimble, be prepared to ask, and don't, as Mukhtar said, don't think about your feelings, get out of the comfort zone. Don't, just ask. If the data is there, if you're getting readers, if you're getting higher engagement with your newsletters, you might be primed to be making an ask.
Great, thank you. I wanted to also note something that Shireen Azimi, the new-ish communications manager at INN, put in the chat, which is that there's a new site that I'm sure many of you are familiar with called newsforgood.org. That is also run on GiveGab. So when you make your profile on GiveGab for NewsMatch, you also have the option to include that profile on News for Good. Both of the pages can wire donations directly to your bank account throughout the year. So one page on GiveGab, it can serve as your year-round donation page if you'd like, in tandem with your own donation page on your website. I'm not seeing any more questions in the chat at the moment. Mara, could you jump to the next slide? So I just wanted to once again put up the NewsMatch timeline as we get ready to wrap up here. The timeline has been shifted a bit later this year because of COVID. So typically the INN applications were due July 1st to join NewsMatch. This year it'll be July 31st. And then the onboarding process with Miami Foundation, also known as the NewsMatch application, it's really a very simple process, is now moved to the end of August. Christina also dropped in the chat that you can contact the NewsMatch team at hello@newsmatch.org. The other thing I'm going to put in the chat is newsmatch.org/FAQ. Newsmatch.org website has all the updated information for 2020. And you can check out the FAQ page if you have, nitty-gritty questions. If you can't get them answered there, feel free to reach out to us. Sarah Vicello just dropped in the INN membership application for any new folks who are here. And I think we're unless there are more questions, we're wrapping up with a little bit of extra time. We have one more question from Michael Stoll. How many segmented communications with members per year? Is there an optimum pacing? Is there a minimum number of members where this makes sense? I think this is probably a question for Christina. Christina, what are your thoughts on segmenting?
I think it's good to segment, and it's a way to know your audience, who is reading, who's a member, who is a reader, who's a donor, who's giving at certain levels. But I don't think there is really, optimum pacing, and I think that's different for every single organization. I think a great place to start is just to start sending out things and looking at the data, start tracking the data, and then begin to figure out how you might want to test the frequency or what type of message you put in there, and it will be really unique to each organization.
Just want to respond quickly to Sonia's question in the chat, which is, will the materials be made available earlier this year because of the election? I don't have a definitive answer right now. We're still playing a bit of catch up because of the way that COVID affected everybody this spring and doing the short-term fundraiser for Giving Tuesday Now. That is certainly an item that I will bring up with the funders group, and I know it's on Christina and News Revenue Hub's mind as well, getting those campaign assets to you as soon as possible. To Pam's question, yes, there will be a NewsMatch application this year. It'll be at the end of August because now the INN application is shifted to July 31st. And question from Bill, what percentage of donations does a group like GiveGab typically require? I assume you're saying what percentage do they take of donations? And Christina, I believe it's like around 2%. Is that right?
I'm not sure. We can look it up.
Yeah. We'll get back to you on that, Bill.
We need to wrap up now. So we'll get that answer back to you, Bill, in the chat afterward, but I need to pass the mic to Fran to introduce our next speaker.